Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, How to Build Employee Wellness Programs People Actually Use. So for today, we have a lovely panel made up of Lee, Dr. Iain, and Jacqueline. And so I just want to take a moment to go around the panel here and have y'all introduce yourselves. Just tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, maybe a little bit about the company that you're from and what perspective you're hoping to bring today. And of course, why are you so passionate about this topic? I'll pick on Lee since your headshot is first on the slide.
I hope I will remember to answer all those questions, but I'm Lee Rubin. I'm the founder and CEO of Confetti. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're most known for creating really fun team building experiences, actually fun stuff. And we've worked with over 10,000 organizations and done events for literally millions of people. And my specialty is really an expert on remote culture and how to do it, and a lot of it related to remote event planning as well. And what was some other questions, Rebecca? I feel like I'm missing them.
Oh, no, no, just curious to hear why you're so passionate about the topic of wellness.
Ooh, I mean, yeah. What's the point of this life that we have if we're not going to be well doing it? We have to prioritize that. And that's been a journey for me to figure out like what wellness means as a CEO, as a mother. So I'm excited to share my learnings with y'all and hopefully add some value.
Thanks, Lee.
Great. Now I'll go next. My name is Iain with a weird spelling. The second I is there, but silent. And I am an organizer by background. My PhD is in applied psychology. I'm the head of behavioral science at a company called Sunny. And at Sunny, it's kind of related in some ways to Confetti. We really admire what Confetti does. We are about team enablement and manager enablement in the flow of work. So we're all about helping managers get a weekly read on how their teams are doing, and we give them proven science-backed recommendations on here's one thing that you can do, whether it's in a team meeting or in a one-to-one or asynchronously through remote working. Here's one thing that you could do over the next week that's going to move your team members along on these health indicators. And that's really where my passion lies. I've spent nearly 20 years in organizations. Tell you. I spent nearly 20 years in organizations helping with behavior change, helping with culture change, helping with change transformation. As a psychologist, I just love the human irrationality around change and how, what we think might work often doesn't. And so when it comes to well-being and the well-being strategy, well-being change, as you'll hear from me today, I have a lot of not just views, but I think there's a lot of really interesting science on how our initial ideas about how we build well-being in organizations and teams don't actually work, and there are other ways to bring that about. So that'll be my role today. Jacqueline, over to you.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline. I'm the VP of Customer Success here at Bucketlist, and I oversee the account management support and onboarding teams. Bucketlist is all about rewards and recognition. So you want to influence the right behaviors in your teams, but also encourage engagement and reduce or encourage retention of employees. Wellness is super important to me. I think it became a hot topic when we all became remote. So I think for me, it's helped me find that balance so that I can be the best that I can be.
Thank you so much for the introductions. Before we get started here, I just want to set the stage for the conversation and launch a quick poll to see what the group's thinking is around this topic here today. Let me just find my poll button. All right. So we have three questions here. Curious to hear this group's thoughts on the biggest challenges with employee wellness initiatives, how you think your current initiatives are going, and lastly, what areas of wellness your organization is most focused on right now. Yeah, the panel, we're just very excited to hear what y'all think on this topic and what you're seeing in reality, and hopefully we can steer some of the conversation towards that direction to make it as relevant as we can to the room today. I also just wanted to share a quick note on why we chose this topic. August is National Wellness Month, as many of you probably know and are probably celebrating. And so it just felt like the perfect opportunity to bring the community together around this topic that touches every one of us every single day. And I'm sure we've all seen wellness at work has become a lot broader than it used to be. It's not just about, fitness, physical wellness or like mental wellness. And so organizations are thinking a lot more holistically about how to support their people and create programs that people actually want to engage with. And so for this session, we wanted to make sure the conversation was as relevant as possible. So today's fireside chat is shaped by the questions that y'all submitted ahead of time. This is what you said was the biggest questions around wellness for HR and people and culture. And so today we'll talk about wellness in general, the shifts that we're seeing, how to build participation with the programs, and then how to sustain the engagement. We want to talk about leadership buy-in and how to build that wellness culture, how to be, of course, inclusive and accessible when it comes to wellness, how to measure and prove impact, as well as how to do it on a limited budget, because as we all know, we don't have a infinite one as much as we would like. And so these are the topics, the core topics that we'll be going over today. So would also invite those of you in the chat to contribute to the discussion, because I know all of us, we've all seen different things, and hopefully share some nuggets that we can all take away and use in our own everyday lives here. Panel, is there anything else you want to add before I share the results and we can hop into the first question? Nope. All right, let me end the poll here. Thank you all for voting, sharing results. Can y'all see the results on the page here? Amazing. So for the first question, looks like biggest challenges, the top few are getting people to participate. So good thing we have a question around that, and sustaining engagement. Second question, low, it's difficult to drive participation. And for the last one, the most areas that folks are focusing on right now is the mental and physical well-being. Very interesting. Panel, Lee, I see you nodding. Is there something you'd like to add to these results that we're seeing here on screen?
Oh no, I'm very fascinated by seeing what's coming up. I love data. I'm like, oh, this is very interesting. I'm processing it live too.
No, totally. Iain, Jacqueline, anything you want to comment on here before we hop into the chat?
Nothing for me.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, in that case, let me stop sharing my screen here. All right.
You know what I think is worth maybe mentioning, and you already alluded to it, Rebecca, but and I've heard like there isn't like a universally agreed upon model, but the model that I stumbled upon is like the 8 dimensions of wellness. So the common groups are like physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, social, occupational, financial, and environmental. So it's like there's a lot of different ways that we can add wellness to our lives, and I think it's just like something worth like thinking about.
That is so interesting that there are 8 different ones. And so for yourself, Lee, which ones resonate most with you, or like what does wellness mean to you?
Ooh, I mean, I think you need a little bit of everything. I don't know if I can just pick one, but yeah, I mean, I feel like for I don't know if we're kind of like just getting into it, but um for me, like wellness has really shifted over the last 8 months because I started practicing specifically Vedic style meditation. And I think I used to think of wellness like mostly as things that you just do, right? Like exercise, like eat well and like get enough sleep. But now I really think about it more as like a state of which you're operating from. Like, um, are you operating from like a place where you can show up for yourself and have the energy to actually enjoy your life and like not just get through it? And yeah, I think that's like just where my journey has been lately.
Oh, I love that. It's such a different journey for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Iain, Jacqueline, what about the two of you? What does wellness mean to you?
Absolutely. I think wellness to me isn't just one thing. Like Lee said, it kind of embodies a lot of different elements and different dimensions. So for me, it's the full picture, mind, body, and soul. So you can't really address one without addressing all of the other ones. So when you have all of those dimensions being tended to, that's when you kind of see people truly thrive in their lives and in their workplace.
I'm pretty aligned with everything that's gone before. A couple of things I would add. One is I like to separate, it's not I like to separate, it's important to separate ill-being from well-being. We often think of them as a spectrum. When you really think it through, just the absence of ill-being doesn't necessarily mean we're well, and vice versa. So, I might have a bad back, or I might not have a bad back, but the absence of that doesn't necessarily mean that I am well. We often see them as a spectrum, but that's unhelpful, especially when designing interventions to target them, because actually the interventions you design to reduce, prevent, treat ill-being are quite different to the ones that you need to do to promote well-being, which I liked your idea, Lee. It's like a state, So when we think about it from a psychological perspective, it's that state of flourishing, a flow of being challenged and having the resources that mean that you can rise to that challenge in a way that you feel like you're performing, you're delivering, and you're growing and developing as a result. And I think that's really appropriate too for the workplace, where I often worry that about two things in this domain, just if it's of interest. One is increasing over optimization and informational overload about our wellness. I don't know how many of you wear a fitness band tracker now and track your mood and track your sleep and track your everything, which actually can be detrimental because you drive yourself nuts by trying to over optimize all of your health markers. So there's the like information overload that is a concern. What was the second one that I was going to say? Where was I going with this? Never mind. I'll come back to it. But like we need to separate these two things out and treat well-being separately from ill-being.
I love that. It can definitely become obsessive once we have all of this data and we're thinking, oh, we have to min-max everything. So that's a really good point, to bring up. We don't want it to be stressful. We want it to help us actually become more feel more well. So no, that's a great point, Ian. And so from what you've all been saying, it definitely sounds like wellness has become a little bit more holistic. There's a lot of different dimensions of it. It's different for everyone. And so how are we seeing that in the workplace? Like, are you seeing the expectations from employees change on what they expect, and how are organizations then in turn kind of responding? So I guess, sorry, that's a two-part question. Anybody
Yeah,
want to
I'm
jump
I'm
in?
happy to go first with this and carry on my thoughts. Sunny, we talk about the workplace being 3D right now, which is these three really big factors affecting everyone. So we're distributed. We know that over three-quarters of American workers who can work remotely are doing so in some form. So we're massively distributed. I think I saw that in some of the comments too. We're heavily disrupted right now. I know disruption's always been there, but man, last couple of years, right, with the AI transformation and with everything else that's going on in the world, the workplace is heavily disrupted. People change, jobs changing, organizations changing, economy changing faster than ever. And we're heavily distracted. And among coffee and energy questions, I love seeing all those points because it's something that I'm seeing that I don't think is talked about enough. In a really big Microsoft study, they found that 80% of global employees and leaders, and this is Microsoft, they're not like a small consultancy with a angle to sell here. It's like their research. 80% of employees and leaders said that they lack the time and energy they need to do their jobs. Of over 30,000, I think that they surveyed, 80% saying that. We're super distracted by all of these new communication tools that we're putting into the workplace, all the new communication tools that we're putting onto our phones and our personal life. We receive, I think, a ping, a notification from somewhere, from a device every 1 to 2 minutes throughout the day. That's not a state that we evolved into. So when we're working and living in this environment where we are distributed, disrupted, and distracted, it affects naturally our well-being, right? How can you be well? How can you flourish? How can you focus? How can you be connected with other people when you're in these states? And that's really what you're going to hear from me consistently over this is we focus a lot on well-being programming externally to try and solve really targeted potential health challenges or well-being challenges. And we're not doing enough in the workplaces, it's really clear, to actually make work sustainable and to make work a source of well-being and to reduce the chance that work can create ill-being. And that's when I hear employees talking and when I look at the academic research, that's fundamentally what I keep hearing right now.
I think on my end, what we're seeing is a fundamental shift away from wellness as a checkbox towards wellness as something that's genuinely personal and holistic. Post-pandemic, people recalibrated what mattered to them. Mental health came out of the shadows, and people came to work with a very different baseline expectation. They wanted purpose, flexibility, and to feel like their employer actually cares about their life outside of work. And that's when rewards and recognition also became part of the conversation, part of the wellness conversation. When someone feels genuinely appreciated at work, it has a direct impact on their stress levels, their sense of belonging, and their engagement. So at Bucketlist, we've kind of seen this firsthand. When employees are recognized in a meaningful, personalized way, it's not just a morale boost in the moment, it creates this sustained sense of psychological safety and motivation. So the companies that we've seen that are adapting well are really moving away from this one size fits all program and opting for more something that's a little bit more flexible, offering more choice, incorporating all dimensions of wellness. They're incorporating financial wellness, community wellness, social wellness, physical, mental, DEI. You've seen kind of all the dimensions that Lee had mentioned earlier. So you kind of see it more shifting from an HR program to more of a cultural strategy.
I'll piggyback off of that because yeah, I really think that wellness is increasingly about, and this is also from, the confetti perspective, but just increasingly about how people experience work and whether they feel connected and recognized and included and energized, like just giving them the permission to be human, because we all are. So, I mean, maybe we might have some robots here, but like there's a bunch of note takers I saw. But for the most part, we're all human.
Love it. So it sounds like it's definitely something that is super important. And so kind of going back to one of the poll questions where um employees want this, but there is a disconnect between we really want this, but then employers are offering it, but then we're not seeing the engagement. And so, how do we actually get people to engage with these things that we're putting in place? Because people are saying that's very important. And so, I think we've all launched a few things. It starts off with a huge, exciting launch, and then after a few months, participation kind of starts to drop. And so, in what ways, I guess, Jacqueline, I'll pick on you. How have you seen people address this?
Sure. This is one of the biggest challenges that we hear from HR leaders. The launch goes great, people are excited, and then 3 months in, you're looking at a participation drop. So I've seen a couple things that have helped a program stick. One is consistency, and not consistency in the sense of doing the same thing over and over again, but showing up reliably. Employees need to trust that the program isn't going away, that leadership is still behind it, and that there's always something new to engage with. The moment it becomes an afterthought, people will treat it like one. The second thing is keeping it fresh. What we've seen both with our customers and also here at Bucketlist is that organizations that introduce a new activity or focus area either each week or each month maintain a significantly higher engagement. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be a lunchtime walk challenge. It could be a healthy cooking prompt. You can get creative with it. And finally, and this is where I see the biggest difference, is in rewards. When participation is recognized and rewarded, you create a reason to come back, not just a feel good reason, but a tangible one. So we've consistently seen programs that are tied to meaningful rewards sustain engagement at a much higher rate.
I'll go
I love what
next.
you're saying there. Oh, sorry, Lee, go ahead.
No, good. I completely second what Jacqueline is saying. Like the things that we were seeing in a paraphrased or different version of what Jacqueline was saying is just like wellness is a personal journey, and like there's no one activity or one perk or one reward benefit whatever that works for everybody. So finding ways to make it a bit more customized is very key. And then one thing that I'll add from the confetti lens is like wellness is also something that's very social. Like people need connection, they need belonging, they need recognition, like all these different types of shared experiences, especially in a distributed workplace. And I really think that wellness has to live inside the employee experience, right? It can't only be this like once a quarter or, like August is wellness month and this is the only day out of the year that we spend talking about this. Like we really need to go beyond just thinking about this question of like what wellness programs do we offer to like how does it actually feel to work here? So I think actually, Dr. Ian, at this point, that would be a perfect segue to you.
We're very aligned on that for sure, sure. As a build on that, I'm generally skeptical also of any top-down deployment these days, of big splashy programmatic approaches. That used to be the way that we could scale stuff across organizations, but we don't need to these days. I think what you see with, you've got Bucketlist, Confetti, and Sunny represented on this panel, right? And what you see in terms of common approaches for us and the marketplace overall is we can actually provide much more contextualized, personalized recommendations and options for managers and their teams. And who knows what well-being is required or rebalancing of a job, of work experience is required better than a team and their manager. Related to that, I think everyone on this call knows that managers have the same impact on our mental health as our romantic partners. And managers, like the relationship with your manager, explains 70% of the variance of your engagement level in organizations. So anything we can actually do to make to help the manager and the team and their relationship in the way in which they work, not only you benefit from having a better choice of what programs, what opportunities and activities team members engage with, but you're also strengthening those bonds that we know are actually really, really key in predicting these outcomes when it comes to well-being and engagement.
What can I ask a follow-up question, Ian?
Of
What are
course.
some, okay, thank you. Yeah, so what are some ways that we can help managers? Because to your point, there's a lot on their plates, and so anything we can do to help managers and leaders would be great. So like, what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I'm like talking about what we're doing at Sunny. We have a framework of we call them team vitals. So it's related right to the health side. We believe, and it's not we believe. I'm the head of behavioral science. We've done our research. We looked across over a century of academic research on what psychologists call climate, which is stable measures of team environment, team experiences. And we found that there are 5 key ones that really predict sustainable performance, so that well-being, that flourishing performance, engagement, and effectiveness. And those are energy, so a climate, a team environment that promotes energy, particularly relational energy. So the energy we get from working with people who lift us up. So energy, support, the support that we give one another. Are we in a supporting environment? Safety. So do we feel psychologically safe? Of course. Alignment. Are we aligned around the work that we're doing? Are we pulling in the same direction? Support and recognition. So clearly a lovely nod to the great work that Bucketlist do there. Recognize, does it feel like my work is valued, my contribution is valued? And we've created a weekly pulse of helping managers just check in on a weekly basis with these 5 states, and then an algorithm that provides, here's the science-backed support that can move you along in that way. So I think technology in that example, right, is something that's enabling us to keep a better, more focused sense of these markers and how our team members are doing and how we can respond to that. And then I think if you've got a library of content like Confetti have, like the optionality and the means of navigating all those different options, then that's key as well. Like when we're talking about 8 domains of health and well-being, how do we make sure we don't overload our managers? How do we make sure there are clear, easy ways, probably using technology again, to actually find the things that are going to make the difference? Anything you'd add to that, Lee?
Well, I mean, two things. One of them is in one of the free resources that will come at the end, there's a toolkit that we essentially gave y'all for free. And our toolkits is a new arm of the business that is meant to help primarily managers because it's so tough to be a manager today. I mean, like the responsibility, as you said, is like the success of your team, the happiness of your team basically falls on your shoulders. But like most managers really didn't get the proper leadership training to help them navigate these pretty complex communication life challenges that we get thrown on a regular basis. So the toolkits are really meant to help with that, and there's a wellness toolkit that y'all can experience for free. I mean, the only other thing that I'm thinking about, and it's not really from a manager perspective, but it's more aligned with the question of how can we make this easier for people to participate? And your wellness program needs to be easy, right? Like if it takes 3 logins and 5 emails and a million different ways that you need to explain it and like an hour and a half video call, like you're gonna lose people. So we need to make it really simple for managers and for teams to find um consistent like rhythms of incorporating these different types of wellness programs into their day-to-day rhythm.
Plus one to the less logins, the better. There's just too many things. Jacqueline, there's a question in the chat for you actually, about what rewards can look like when it comes to encouraging participation and engagement with initiatives.
Absolutely. So there's a couple ways you can go about it, and I'll talk about it a little bit later as well. But there's ways that you can hand out awards, where you can just hand out awards for different activities, for physical activities, for mental activities, for community impact awards. And you can choose to attach those awards to points, and you can use those points to redeem for different activities, different gift cards, different experiences. So there's ways that, or you can have people complete an activity and then all their names go into a draw to win a prize. So there's so many different ways that you can utilize awards and recognition in your different activities.
It just sounds so fun. Like, definitely want to do that. Amazing. I think we touched upon the idea of managers and leaders more, and there were a lot of great questions submitted beforehand about how much of that really, like, how can you get the leaders involved? Because we can offer all of these really great things, but then how do you make sure that people actually feel like they have permission to take care of their well-being?
Whether you said that they have the permission.
Yeah, because I know often people are, they have this like great PTO, for example, this PTO program. People are like, okay, but like, can I actually take unlimited? Like, I don't see other people doing it, or like leaders staying late all the time. How do I sort of not feel guilty taking care of myself?
I mean, at least from my perspective, I think that you almost kind of answered it. Like, I think the leadership behavior matters much more than like the leadership, like than just like the messaging of it all. Like you can tell employees that they need to take PTO and disconnect or prioritize well-being, but if their manager isn't taking a break, and there's a culture of just making people feel guilty for stepping away, like employees are going to follow that behavior and not the policy. So, that's my 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah, and I was gonna say something very similar. Well-being generally starts at the top. Leaders have to model the behavior publicly. The CEO taking PTO and talking about it, managers blocking their calendars for focus time and not apologizing for it. So when people are seeing leadership treating their own well-being as non-negotiable, it gives everyone else the permission to do the same. But what I find that often gets missed is that culture isn't only built from the top down. Peer-to-peer recognition is one of the most powerful tools for embedding well-being into how people work day to day. When a colleague acknowledges that you took a mental health day and came back stronger, or recognizes that you covered a team member while they took time to unplug, that's when culture is building in real time. Here at Bucketlist, we actually hosted a Bucketlist day where we closed down the office for the whole day, and everybody took a step away from their laptops, and we all went and did a cooking class together. All the major hubs that had offices and groups of team members, and we all did a cooking class together. It was great teamwork. We had a great time. We got to socialize, and this is something that really encouraged this time away, and where we're not just working at our computers all day. So it was a really fun event and great idea for others.
Yeah, just to build on what's been said already, I think there are two different adoption challenges here that it's worth picking apart. So I think when it's adoption or permission for what I would call sustainable work, right? So I don't see PTO as a well-being program. I think that's a necessary, not just right, but I think it's necessary for good sustainable work from employees. I think sustainable hours, reasonable deadlines, the way in which we make the work, the way in which we configure our work, I think is all about the workflow and how we are setting that up for team members to be able to do that in a stretching but sustainable way. And I think that is where leadership and visibility, open dialogue between leaders and team members, ideally co-creating it with yourselves is really important. I saw in the comments, what if the CEO is the one discouraging taking PTO off? That's a very difficult situation. We know that power influences these things. We know that it makes a really big difference. I think as a manager in an organization like that, there are some things you can do to still create the right sustainable work, but it's clearly difficult if that's the top-down leadership message. And I would distinguish that from adoption challenges with things like subsidized gym membership, for instance. And I think it's really important. What you see with those kinds of well-being programs is a really clear adoption bias. So actually, the people that sign up for, in this instance, subsidized gym membership, not to pick on it, are the people who already go to the gym. By far, by far. It's really interesting. If you ask employees, would you like us to create a subsidized gym membership program? Everyone will say yes, because it's something that sounds nice, right? And in terms of the psychological, irrational forecasting, if I don't go to the gym, I think, oh, that might make me a gym person. Yes, I'll take that. Inevitably, the people that use it are the people who already go to the gym. So in terms of your well-being program, you might be thinking, oh, we can improve the overall physical well-being of our team members by increasing this and introduce the subsidized gym membership. Actually, all you're doing is saving a little bit of money for the people who already go to the gym. So, which again is why I'm really in favor of how do we actually just make work better? I think that's where the investment goes, where we can really make a difference for the majority of our employees, rather than potentially subsidizing these really specific programs that often have an adoption bias.
Mhm. I'm never going to say no to free perks from employers. So there is a question in here actually from Allison. What strategies might you suggest for helping to move the needle on leadership seeing well-being as more of an experience and part of the culture rather than just something that Total Rewards runs? And so any tips there for Allison?
I've actually done this little experiment, like this little thing before. If you're brave, you can do it too. There's an old psychology study where they have participants hold their hand in a bucket of icy water, and I've had senior leaders do this. And with one group, you ask them to hold it in for as long as they can. And in the other group, you say, can you keep your hand in this bucket of icy water for 90 seconds? And invariably, the people who have that time limit can hold their hand in icy water for longer. And then off the back of that, I make a point about sustainable work. So we know actually that there are these clear factors that make us perform better for longer. And those are things like having a finite deadline of, you can sprint, you can push, you can have a hard work week when you know that there's an end goal in mind. You can, what's another example? Because that's basically about having intensity with a break and with recovering within a confined time. Broadly, you can make the point in a really experiential way for leaders that sustainable performance, which is what I like to talk about, is how do you set up and maximize the output of your teams over a period of time? And that requires building in the right work design, such as my example of the bucket of water, a clear like push and then end and recovery and go again.
I'm going to be honest, I didn't know what direction the story was going into until you explained.
Exactly. It's risky business running experiments on executives, but if you want some fun, you can get away with it.
All right, Ali, if you try it, let us know how it went.
I'll just say I'll like for Dr. Iain, he's really amazing at bringing such compelling and interesting like stats and data that make you pause and think. And I think when it comes to the question, I forgot who asked it, but I think sometimes some of those leaders, you need to reframe well-being in business terms. So instead of just, using the term well-being, maybe you're connecting it to retention, to performance, to engagement, to burnout risk and manager effectiveness, like the buzzwords that like make these people happier. So we get what we all like, what everybody wants, but using different language to get there.
Yeah, I'm just reading what William has said here. I think when well-being is focused on work design rather than perks, it can be easier to persuade that everybody owns it rather than just like one team, one person, one role. And just seeing a question come in from Lorenz as well. What wellness strategies have you seen work particularly well for 24/7 organizations where employees may have very different sleep routines, sleep schedules and routines? Anybody want to take a crack at this one?
Um, I think it's about finding activities that people can do on their own schedules. And there wasn't really a time limit. I've seen companies who give activities throughout the course of an entire summer. And say, let's cook a healthy meal together and share that recipe this month sometime. Or go be active with your family and share a photo of it. There's so many different volunteer in your community. If you're an expert in finance, share financial budgeting tips. So there's so many different ways that people can participate if their schedules are not aligned, and you can find something that people can do on their own time, on their own schedules.
What you're saying here, Jacqueline, I think it works for people. Yeah, anybody who's looking for async or distributed ways that'll work really well.
I would also say, I don't know if I'm reading too much into your question, Lorenz, but there's again differentiating between the outcome. There's also that ill-being angle and duty of care that we have of organizations to look after employees. If, my mind immediately goes to working with healthcare teams, working with physicians and nurses who may have irregular sleep schedules and supporting their well-being, but again, reducing the risk of ill-being in those cases. Where again, I think if you empower the managers in those environments, not just with options and autonomy, but with the knowledge of how important sleep is and how you can cycle on and off changing schedules, for instance, in a way that still drives recovery. Clearly in those very technical environments, that's a really important consideration too. Lee, I saw you came off mute.
Yeah. I want to like add the fact that we talked about that there's like multiple different dimensions of wellness. And I think, what approach we've taken with like my team and company is like, I'm not going to be able to do all the different, there's so many different ways that like a business owner, as a CEO, somebody who's responsible for benefits, that I could contribute to my company, to my team's wellness, right? Like 401k matching. I would love, love, love to do that for my team, but we couldn't afford it. We also have such a global team, the cost, and I actually have regrets not doing this, but at the time we told ourselves like, we don't have the financial means to get everybody together for an on-site. And again, I have my regrets. But the point of where I'm going with this is that it doesn't mean, okay, we can't do an on-site and we can't do 401k matching. So we're not doing any of the other things for those dimensions. I think it's a matter of like, you can have that transparency with your team and tell them like, I wish we could do this, but we can't. So like, let's find out, how do we recreate this positive component of this dimension, whatever that might be, to recreate that in the reality that we work. And a lot of employees just want to see good intention, right? So like something that you can do is like, if you have a 24/7 organization, which you mentioned, like make the resources truly 24/7. For in the world of like team building, like we tell our customers, like instead of doing a 200-person company event at 4 p.m. where some people are logging in at 2 a.m., split it up, do like groups of 50 at different times of the event, and they're all sharing the same experience, just at different time zones. Um, maybe say, okay, we can't do an offsite, but I want to give every employee a bit more control over their schedule, or I want to train managers on like shift worker well-being and how to better communicate, support to them. Like there's just so many other ways that we can contribute. Um, so yeah, that's it. That's the end of my rant.
I love that. And just you just prompted me to think of with the shift worker thing, by the way. Often in shift work, we'll have supervisors do a safety briefing, or it depends on the technical environment. Usually there's a shift briefing, a safety briefing. And I love it when organizations use that mode for not just safety or customer briefings, but actually other areas of well-being, social and mental as well. So it's finding those little opportunities, like Lee mentions, to weave these things in is a great way to make it work as well.
Thanks, everyone. And Lorenz sends their thanks as well in the chat for that. Um, is there anything else we wanted to cover when it comes to making sure the programs that we're making are inclusive and as accessible as possible to all different types of employees, regardless of their role, their demographic, where they're located, things like that?
I can give a couple of examples that I've seen customers do. One great example where a customer had a summer passport program. So employees received a passport and they earned stamps by completing different wellness activities throughout the summer. They got a stamp if they went for a walk or cooked a healthy meal or tried something new for their mental health or volunteered in their community. There were so many different options that they could do. And at the end of the summer, completed passports were put into a draw to win a prize. So what was really great about this is that the activities were async and open-ended. So a frontline worker, a remote worker, anyone in different time zones, they could all participate on their own time. So nobody was really excluded based on their role or location. Another one that I did see is people have gotten really creative with their awards. They've given out awards for all the different the full wellness spectrum. They've given out awards for financial wellness, self-care, physical activities, mental health. There's so many different awards you can give out. And what was great about this one is that it celebrated the different dimensions of wellness. When you're letting people know that there's multiple ways to show up and be recognized. Not everyone is going to run a marathon, but somebody might share budgeting tips or volunteer in their community or cook a great meal for their family. So there's so many different ways to show up for wellness and well-being.
I love how visible those awards make it. Like you can see what everybody else is up to as well. And then when there's like a award tied to it too, it just really shows like, oh, the company cares about this truly. So those are really, I love those examples, Jacqueline.
I'll go, I guess. It's piggybacking off of kind of what I last shared, but like for me the principle is really keeping the strategy consistent, but making the experience itself flexible depending on whatever parameters you're and constraints you're faced with. So like a company can have a shared goal around well-being, right? And connection and belonging or whatever other kind of components they have. And then they don't have to require everyone to participate in the exact same way. So I think this is especially important for distributed and global teams. Like you do need a mix. And some people want like a live group experience. Some people want something more async. Like some have an hour, some have 5 minutes. Like cultural preferences, time zones. There's so many like constraints in today's like world that we live in. So I think it's really just a matter of the shared purpose is the most important, and then the flexibility comes from how employees choose to participate.
And the tiniest build on that, I almost feel silly saying it because everyone on this call, I think, knows this already. But that point of allowing employees to choose to participate within a structured approach is key, as opposed to assuming that certain demographics, certain groups have various needs that we can provide to. I see at the moment as an example of this that often doesn't get noticed. There's a lot of stereotypes around generational differences in the workplace. that are not backed up by research. The research shows that there aren't actually that many significant differences between generations. And I think that goes for well-being, and I've seen people spend time designing, a well-being program for Gen Z coming to the workplace. And it's often actually patronizing and backfires in that regard. And actually some of the things you design for that may work for other groups as well in the organization. So having the right strategy, having it apply, and then creating the space for the individuals and all the various infinite ways in which we differ from one another to pick from that is so much more effective than building programs based on assumptions and stereotypes of groups.
Mhm. And you bring up a good point, all of you, about personalizing it to the person, just because everybody wants it in a different way. And so, but that also sounds like it might be hard to measure. So how would you suggest measuring the success of this wellness initiative that you're putting in?
Oh, I'd love to go first on this. Um, Strong beliefs here. I think adoption measures are pretty useless for many of the reasons I've already laid out. So I'm very wary of adoption measures. Don't rely on those. Instead, try and benchmark on really validated measures. I think engagement scores overall, but also of specific items, are generally there's a strong correlation between engagement, feeling engaged, and well-being. So if your organization has an engagement survey that they're using, you should be benchmarking against that. You should be looking at absenteeism. You should be looking at turnover. You should be looking at retention of high performers, of team members, using those solid benchmark data, which again, I think resonate more at the C-suite level, but also really crucially, I feel like it's a theme throughout this conversation. You're one HR function, one people function, one talent culture function, not a well-being arm of this behemoth. So as much as possible, integrating well-being into HR strategy, business strategy, how the work gets done, using the same measures. Again, I feel like that's probably pretty obvious for everyone on this call, but it's pretty important.
Lee, Jacqueline, anything you want to add?
I agree with Ian. Engagement is the first place I'd look as well, but not necessarily who showed up, but who came back. Like, are people re-engaging month over month? Are they bringing other colleagues in? So sustained participation is a much stronger indicator that the program is resonating than a launch spike. But the real proof for me is in retention. If your wellness strategy is genuinely improving how people feel at work, their sense of belonging, their psychological safety, their connection to the organization, you'll see it in whether or not people stay.
Oh, I love that one. The coming back. It's like a good indicator. Like someone might go once. If they really didn't like it or didn't work for them, they will not come back a second time. So I love that one, Jacqueline.
Largely think that they covered it. So I'm not sure if I have too much to add, but yeah, just like also just consider zooming out, like looking at the broader employee experience. Like, do people feel connected? Do people feel supported? Is belonging improving? Like, you guys all have a good pulse check on your company's culture. You know when you have a bad one, you know when you have a good one. It's not rocket science. Like, what is this getting better?
Love to zoom out. All right, I'm just looking at time here. We have a couple more minutes left for our last question. It's about the wellness on a limited budget. This one was a big question coming in. I know we covered parts of it throughout the conversation, so I guess just to wrap things up, are there any, if you don't have a big wellness budget, where would this panel suggest putting the money to get most value out of it?
All right. I went off mute first, so I'll just it's like Sandra from the beginning. Um, I've always said, like, whether it's like in your personal life or whatever, like, can you go to Disney World and get the fancy trip? Like, of course you can, but also sometimes just going across the street and getting ice cream is very fulfilling. And I'm saying that from, like, again, like a personal financial component. And if resources are limited, it doesn't mean that you do nothing. It just means that you have to kind of focus and reprioritize how you're tackling the problem. And I would personally start with what employees actually need. And then look for investments that can solve essentially more than one problem at once. So like as many two birds, one stone. So an example for this could be like um, an experience that might support like well-being while also strengthening connection and belonging, right? So you're like doing something that has like both components, just like the most that you can give like an impact from like a single investment, that would be great. Um,
Gonna put you on the spot. What have you kind of done in this space as that example? Two birds, one stone. Something you've
Sorry,
done.
are you asking? I didn't know
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
heard that.
Lee. I was curious, how have you in the past hit two birds with one stone?
You're putting me on the spot.
I know, well, we'll come back to you.
I'm like, what specific ones are a two bird, one stone example? Um, yeah, come back to me. I'm thinking of only one bird, one stone at a time in the moment.
No, 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 all good. Sorry, that was very on the spot. But yeah, Jacqueline, Ian, if either of you want to go first with some ideas here.
Sure. I mentioned one earlier, the summer passport that a customer had done. This is great. You could do it over the course of a quarter. You could have weekly challenges and they get stamps into a passport or awards along the way. And then you can enter those that completed it into a draw to win a single prize. You don't have to give prizes out along the way. And then one that we're doing at Bucketlist right now is we're doing a walking, biking, running challenge. And we're using an AI program that shows the map of Canada, and we're trying to get across to Canada. So it's this motion where we're seeing ourselves move across to all different cities as we input our miles and our kilometers of what we're doing in our activity. So it's really, really fun that we get to, and we can log it anytime and see our progress and see where we're going. So that's kind of a fun free example that we're doing.
I found myself opting to bike instead of drive a lot of time this summer just because I wanted to like put it on the map
Yeah.
and not have marketing team be last on because we're doing it by department too. So I don't want our team to be last. So I am definitely putting in some miles there.
Yeah, it's actually encouraged me to get out and walk more as well. So just to kind of be able to add in my steps in there too. So I think it's really encouraged everyone.
There's a follow-up question, Jacqueline, in the chat. What was the program name? If you want to put it in the chat, maybe.
Oh, Rebecca, do you have the name of the program?
I'm gonna ask Katie, our HR director, and then I'll get back to you, Vita. I'll email you later.
As always, I feel like we're pretty aligned as a panel, which is kind of disappointing because a few arguments and conflict on the panel make it a bit more interesting. But I'm just building on what Lee and Jacqueline have said. I think the two birds, one stone thing is really important. I think you've heard me enough on this call by now. I think when employees are struggling to get their work done or they hate the way in which their work is going, the well-being, an external extrinsic well-being program does nothing. They're not going to engage in it. That's where the source of their stress and frustration is. So again, equipping teams locally, equipping managers locally. I think a two birds, one stone example is, there was a great study by Harvard psychologists on what they diary study. They asked people for thousands of days across the participants, what makes your best day? What were your best days? And invariably, the number one diary answer was a sense of progress during the day. I got work done. It felt constructive. Things were moving forward. And so when you take that as that effectively had a positive effect on people, then two birds, one stone is how do we help managers run a team meeting during that week that brings people together, gives them a sense of energy, and actually leaves them feeling a bit more aligned and a bit clearer on what they need to get done that day. Um, Honestly, that has a bigger impact on people's at least mental well-being from a workplace, reduction of stress, increase in that sense of progress and flourishing has a bigger overall effect than again a more extrinsic well-being focus. So that's my little rant, passionate end there.